Hello and welcome to the Rugby Chat podcast. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, and thank you so much for joining me. Don't forget to subscribe to on your favorite podcasting app so we drop onto your phone every single week. Also, please leave us a 5-star review if you use Apple Podcasts. That is always much appreciated and does help us reach more people. If you'd like to watch what happens behind the covers, the show is live on YouTube from 8 p.m. New Zealand time every single Tuesday. You can join the discussion also on Twitter. Rewind. You can also join the discussion on our 5 questions via Twitter. Just follow @DrivingMaul. Look out for the questions and use #RugbyChat. This week I am flying solo. I have no guests. So you'll hear a lot of comments from the live chat on YouTube and also from Twitter as well. So, as I say, please do join in. You guys make the show what it is. This week, I'll be talking about the Rugby Championship and the Mitre 10 Cup. I did say we're going to talk about rugby innovations, but we'll save that for next week once the Rugby Championship is out of the way. So let's crack on and get into it. The first question is, it's the first time since 2013 that Argentina haven't won a rugby championship game. Is 6 years long enough to decide if the expansion is working? So I guess one of the things we've said, one of the things that we've been talking about is Argentina and the structures they have got set up. At the moment, they have an amateur league, domestic league to pick players from, and then also they have the Jaguares in Super Rugby. One of the things that they've said is that they will only pick players who are playing in Super Rugby or in Argentina, and so it's one of those things that it doesn't. So they've restricted it, and they won't pick players from Europe. Now, the Rugby Roundup on the live chat has said Rugby World Cup 2015 tells the answer to that, not the Rugby World Rugby rankings. And I guess the difference really here is not so much around the rankings, but around how they're winning games and they're performing. And one of the things we've seen since 2015 is that Argentina have changed how they go about selecting their teams. Prior to for the 2015 Rugby World Cup, obviously they were picking players from Europe, and since then they have not been doing that. So there is that side of things as well as that the Rugby World Cup 2015 doesn't really tell us where Argentina are at right now, because they've gone and changed how they go around this. So yes, so I'm not sure that 2015 is a good guide really for this. The problem that Argentina have is that if they do select players from Europe, what is to make players play for the Jaguares? Argentina does not have the budget of Toulon, or even Leicester, or Saracens, or Exeter Chiefs, for that matter, and so they can't compete purely on cash, and that's why they're also trying to compete with the jersey as well. And Chris Kelly, I want to see Argentina back to their best. I think we all do. We all want a world, a competitive game across the whole world. Whilst we obviously want our own teams to win, I want England to win, and I want England to win the Rugby World Cup. But I don't want them to be walking every single game and not have any competition. And that's what we want. We want to have these other teams playing as well as they can. Brent Wickstead, Argentina also compromised by the player drain. With little or no depth, they can't afford not to pick players playing abroad. Well, unfortunately, that is what they're doing, is that they're not picking players from abroad. They decided they've done that. And I guess, and that is going to come down to it is maybe they need to think about taking something like the Australian method, where if you've played X season, if you've got X caps for Argentina, or if you played X seasons for the Jaguares, then you're allowed to play abroad and still play for the Pumas because that could possibly be a way of sort of keeping their quality up, keeping access to players whilst also being able to keep or get the Jaguares to be as competitive as they possibly can. And having that Jaguares competitive is important. When we come round to the end of the broadcast agreements, I can't remember if it's sort of the end of 2020 or the beginning of 2020 when it comes round again, Argentina are pitching for a second team. That would then give them a greater playing depth or greater playing pool, at least, to pick from for the Pumas. Whether there's enough quality players for that, we have to wait and see, and whether they could attract more players back from Europe has to be questionable. But that's clearly what I don't think the Pumas can run on just with one team. They do need to spread it. The other point is around the coaching staff. We've already seen Mario Ledesma has quit the Wallabies, or he will be quitting the Wallabies to become the Jaguares head coach going on for next year. So we'll be able to see whether coaching, how much coaching is impacting things at that. Jack Darby, are they wanting a second team? I haven't heard that from anywhere. Yes, they are wanting a second team. I heard it from several different sources. They're looking at wanting to expand, and I think we've heard it even from the deputy chairman of World Rugby that they want to expand. Detcom 20 reckons there's no way they could sustain two teams, but we'll have to see how that is. Well, the proof will be in the pudding. Until we see it, we're not really going to know whether they can or they can't. As I say, we'll find out how much coaching has to do with it. Where Mario Ledesma, who definitely made a big change to the Springboks, to the Wallabies forwards, especially at scrum time, heading into the Rugby World Cup in 2011, that shows us, 2015, that shows us that he is a decent coach, and it will be looking like that. Brett Wicks said Super Rugby should really go 2 leagues based on the English Premier League structures. Sorry, about a cough. No, they can't do that. The travel would just be crazy for teams if they did that. So if you had like one team in Australia that was only in the top division, or one team, say in New Zealand, only in the bottom division, their travel would be crazy with no away games within their own country. So we'll have to see how that goes. So anything, that's how we. So I guess it's still open to questions as to how we'll see about that. About whether personally, I think we're seeing that the current structure isn't working, and that the Pumas either need to select players from overseas or have them at home. And welcome. I have a guest with me from the Rugby Roundup, a great podcast, so do subscribe to them as well. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm doing very well, Paul. How are you going?
I'm doing good, thank you very much. Thank you for saving me from for talking solo for 60 minutes all on my own.
Oh, brother, I know how that goes, mate. I'm Jared, by the way. I'm joined usually by Benny. He couldn't be here. So it's good to have someone else to chat rugby with who knows what they're talking about, because Benny definitely doesn't.
Oh dear, well, it's questionable. Well, we're moving on. I've just sort of so do you think Argentina have got the right structures, and that 6 years shows us that it's not kind of working, or do you think actually it's still growing and things are heading in the right direction?
I'd probably agree with you on the second one. It's probably building towards something. I mean, I wonder how good the All Blacks would have been after 6 years of their existence, right? So essentially Argentina, their professional system has only started existing for 6 years, so you can't. It's too early.
I think it's probably 2 years now actually that they've had the Jaguares in place, which is when they've had their own sort of domestic professional system. Yeah. Before that, obviously they've relied on overseas professionalisms. And yeah, I don't think it's probably too early for the Jaguares, but I think that unless Jaguares improve and they get a second team, I think the Pumas are still going to struggle trying to run off just one team.
I'd have to agree with you there.
Cool. Moving on to question 2 then. South Africa came third, but only beat Argentina. Was the 3-0 victory during the France tour a false dawn, do you think?
See, again, their whitewash of France, there were some impressive performances, but I think it probably says more about the French team they were playing than the Springboks themselves.
I agree. I think that because the top 14 runs so late, and that the top 14 finals on the same weekend as their the first tour game, that they didn't have their full squad. And I know people said, oh, they had their full squad for the second and third tests. They did, but flying out on a Tuesday after you've had a big celebration, drinking session after you've just won the top 14 is hardly the right preparation to go into a test match against the Springboks.
No, at home in South Africa too. No way. No way.
Getting off a long haul flight. Now, that does remind me of a great story. Before the Lions tour, Jack Nauer was playing in the Viva Premiership final, and I don't know what your English geography is like, but they played They played in London, and then they drove back to Exeter on a coach, which is a good 3 or 4 hours.
I know England. I used to live in London for a couple of years. I know it well. I went to a few Gloucester games when I could.
Well, that's a fair old. Wow, impressive. That's a fair old trek when you've got Harlequins and Saracens on your doorstep to make the move.
I'm a big fan of cider, and I just can't get past the West Country accent. I love it.
Well,
plus at the time Jimmy Cowan was playing for them, so I had to go and watch an ex-All Black do his thing.
Ah, yes, and there was me. I think he was well past his best at that point, but
easily.
But anyway, so Jack now got on the coach, drove all the way back to Exeter, which was a good, which is probably a good 4-hour coach drive, drinking the whole way. Got off the coach, grabbed his Lions kit, and then rented a taxi to drive him all the way back to Heathrow to catch the plane to New Zealand.
Oh, wow.
And we wonder why he didn't perform so well in the first couple of games.
I have a similar story. I once did something like that when I was the coach of a rugby team. We not as important as playing. My team made it to the final, and a friend and I had been out the night before celebrating the fact we're in a final the next day as coaches, and only just managed to make it to the final game that morning. Missed the warm-up. The players had to do it themselves. Naturally, we lost.
Oh, dearie me. There's this the slack, the commitment to the team. I used to work in London for Morgan Stanley, and we had bonus day was a big day, and everyone went out drinking from lunchtime onwards. And the agreement was if you either took the next day off or you at least pitched up. It didn't matter how drunk you got. So the next day I pitched up. I was there for several years. This didn't get me the sack, but I did pitch up. Sat at my desk, saw 2 computer screens because I just couldn't focus. After about 5 minutes, turned around to my boss and went, "Excuse me, but there is no way I can work. I'm going home now." She went, "That's okay. You made it. You're allowed to go home and have the day off sick. If you didn't make
exactly, that's what I thought. See, that's what I thought. The boys would have been impressed that I turned up at all. Oh well, there you go.
Anyway, I seem to be slipping into the rugby roundup style of show away from the rugby and into the entertainment side. But anyway, so so yeah, that's what I did think that the Boks came into the Rugby Championship with an over or too high expectations, because that victory over the French team wasn't as convincing as the scoreline suggested. But I do think that they have got themselves, the forwards during this thing have looked much better, with the exception of obviously their tight head, tight prop. The rest of those forwards do look like they've got a team there that's progressing.
Especially Malcolm Marx. What a difference between the first and second game against the All Blacks.
I hear
their forward pack is it's starting to look fearsome again. You can see Etzebeth, and I'm not sold on Mostert or Diago, but I mean, if one of them fills out a bit more, yeah, their forward pack, you're right, it's building towards something. With Khaleesi there as well, and you think they didn't have Jaco Creole wasn't there in that game. They didn't have
Warren. No, I won't say Warren Whiteley, but
well, Whiteley still,
yep,
he's an option. Who is the Quagga Smith as well? They're missing some fantastic forwards.
Yeah, and I think that the loose head also, I thought had a good game as well. I've forgotten his name now.
You can't be talking about Droya.
No,
Droya was Klitschov.
Klitschov had a good game. Droya, I say the tight head,
the specimen, the ginger specimen.
Oh, I think. Sorry, yeah, sorry. The ginger specimen. Yes. So yeah, he is on the tight, isn't he? Yeah, he was good. It was the loose head that was giving away far too many penalties. I mean, if a guy can't scrum at Super Rugby level, there's no way he's going to be able to scrum at international level, and he should have. Why he's getting picked, I don't know. But he seems to be just the weak link in that forward pack. Otherwise, that forward pack looks decent to me. And they've been rotating their I've gone blank. Their locks. Because also they had the guy from the Lions who ran the line out for the Lions and was very good in the line out. He missed this game.
Mostert, I think.
Was that Mostert?
Oh, did he?
So, no, he
came on for Diago at some point, I think.
Mostert, Diago, but they played another lock during the Rugby Championship who I thought was decent. So they got four locks. They got some depth there. Obviously, we said they're missing some loosies as well. So they're building some depth. The problem's really in their backs, isn't it? Is that they can't pass beyond 12.
Yeah, you being an England fan, you're familiar with that, are you?
Well, no,
used to be. I can't say the same about them since 2012, since they beat the All Blacks.
I totally disagree. It never went beyond 10 because 10 would kick it. He wouldn't even pass it to number 12. So the and it's not just the players because Serpentine, Dialonge did the same thing at the Rugby World Cup in 2015. He never passed the ball. Once it hits 12, he's crashing it up. And they have got some outside backs who have got pace, but they just never got the ball. And to me,
when you did see Skosan with the ball, he was quick on his feet. He was similar to Nehe Milner-Skudder, not as good as Milner-Skudder, but he has this knack of hitting contact and still going forward, even though he's been tackled. I thought he didn't get the ball enough, Skosan.
Exactly. I think he's, and I'd love to see Combring back in there as well. But again, doesn't matter who you bring into that back three if you're not going to pass them the ball. And I think that was probably one of their, to me, that's their one growth area that I'd like to see going forwards. I was actually impressed by how Pollard hit the line as well.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Although instead of 12 crashing, he was offloading. He set up that try to bring the Springboks after the red card. He hit the line, offloaded, a couple of quick hands, and then they were in. I'd agree. Pollard was a standout. He made a big difference. It's a shame he had to go back off.
It is, and it's a shame we haven't seen more of him this championship because we only really saw him in that last game. Obviously, injury has been a big issue for him over the last 2 years, and the same with Patrick Lambie, who is the other option in there as well. Those two guys, they've got three good fly halves. The problem is they can only keep one fit at any one time.
Well, there is Kerwin Bosch hiding as well. Remember that young guy from the Sharks?
Yeah, having had a chat with, I took a road trip up to the Northland for their game today, and then another one down to Hamilton, which meant I spent a lot of time with a guy called Andre, who is a Sharks fan, and he says that perhaps Bosch is more, or they're going to see him more at 15 than we are going to see him at 10, which was kind of interesting.
Mackenzie-esque.
Mackenzie-esque, yes. And we'll be getting on to him later, no doubt. But Australia came second in this with those two draws. Is the glass half empty or half full for them going forwards, do you think?
It's got to be half full. Australian rugby needs it to be half full.
Well, there's needing it and there's actually it being so, I guess, is the balancing it.
Well, I've got a sneaky suspicion that the Wallabies are that close to clicking. When you watch them play, all the ingredients are there, but they've just never had all of them at the same time. You see with Reece Hodge and Coria Betty out wide, Bernard Foley starting to slowly find his form again, although his goal kicking is an issue. Their forwards, gone are the days when the Wallabies scrum was a joke. I mean, they're building. It won't be long until the Wallabies are fearsome again, I think. Michael Check has been churning through. He's been selecting a lot of different personnel, which looking at it at the time was kind of like, well, he doesn't know what he's doing. But I'm starting to think that maybe he's an international coach for a reason.
Well, he's definitely international coach for a reason. He got them to second at the Rugby World Cup a couple of years back, so that's not that bad. Jack Derby, hard to know. They have been inconsistent, and that's going to come down to, as you say, him picking so many different players. I do wonder about that pack, though. I'm not sure that they know who their locks are. We've seen that change so many times. The back three tends to have the back row with Pocock coming back. They got the pilferer, but do they have the kind of ball carrying? And then the front row, as you say, they're not the liability they used to be, but they can blow a bit hot and cold. I think.
Yeah, it's a shame that Sean McMahon is leaving. He's been showing some promise, and I was surprised they didn't pick Higginbotham at all.
Yeah, that's true. And especially as he's staying.
He's got that kind of brute kind of style that I think they're missing. Like you're right, Ned Flanders. He doesn't really have a whole lot of weight behind him, does he? He kind of folds into the contact, which you'd suspect if Higginbotham was there, at least he would be that kind of brute that they miss. Yeah,
I think the Ned thing is, I think he's a fairly young guy, isn't he? So yeah, I think they're seeing it as a long-term prospect, and hopefully give him some experience and bring him through. I think that's got to be the idea with him, because again, as you say, he's not up to it right now. Yet. So he could be a guy. The backs, though, are a different ballgame entirely. Maybe a little bit, as you say, maybe lacking some cover, especially at fly half. But otherwise, that looks like a settled back line that's got some quality about it.
Yeah, their back line, like you were saying about Bernard Foley, who replaces him? Quade Cooper in the NRC with the tournament below Rugby Championship. He's the leading missed tackler. He's got 18 missed tackles in the competition, so he's definitely not with the Wallabies' defensive questions at 10. So, yeah, you're right. Who besides Bernard Foley? They've got Mac Mason, who's playing pretty well in the NRC at the moment. They've got, Kurtley Beale.
So
cover 10.
Kurtley Beale is the cover at the moment, but he's not had time there. I mean, another player who always used to like to think of himself as a 10 is someone like, so James Hook from Wales, for example. But if you want to be a 10, you need to have like a season where you are in that position the whole time. You can't be playing 15 and then suddenly thrown in and asked, hey, cover 10 for these 2 games and expect to be an international 10. That's just, it just doesn't work like that. So, Kurtley Beale is the cover there currently. That's all they've got. But if you've got 3 foreigners in your as you're starting fly halves for 3 out of your 5 Super Rugby teams, you're not going to have depth in that position, are you?
No way.
But outside that, it's looking quite good. Obviously, you've got Beale with Carmichael Hunt as cover when he comes back from being injured. You've got Kieran Droney and Corabetti covering 13.
Not to mention Karevi as well. He's been playing well for Brisbane City in the NRC.
Sorry, Kieran Droney and Karevi. That's what I thought of. Who did I say? I said, oh, no, sorry. Yeah, Kieran Droney as 13. You've got Corabetti, Hodge, you've Haylett Petty out on the wings, and then obviously Flau at fullback, where either Haylett Petty or Beale can slot into and cover if needed. So outside of that, outside of the halfbacks, because I'm not sure that there's a decent cover for Genya really, they're looking pretty good.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, the Australian halves, they've settled on their first choice, but they've got no idea who their second choice is.
Oh wow! Sean Dunn says, problem having Foley, Beale, and Folau is that you're covering for 3 turnstiles on defence. I think that's a tad harsh on Beale and Folau, but yeah, one of the problems they do have is that they do have to shuffle that back line in defence, and it's not the same. You're not playing the same positions on attack and defence, which means your counter attack is definitely compromised.
That's for sure. Yeah, I was having the same thought, but you beat me to it.
The other stat that I saw, or that I picked out from the game at the weekend, was that whilst Genia, Foley, and Beale all passed the ball, the other 4 backs passed the ball a combined 3 or 4 times, I think it was. I can't remember exactly the number off the top of my head, in that game at the weekend. So it does seem that their game style is 3 playmakers and then 4 guys who just run off them. Which
well, don't forget Reece Hodge. His one pass did set up the try for Guinea, but
his one, yeah, okay. So his one pass.
Yeah, but so
I think quality over quantity, you're saying.
Yes, but you're right. It does indicate a particular game plan where they're expected to finish and only finish off something.
And when you've got players, that obviously suits someone like Corrivetti, who's coming from rugby league perfectly, because he doesn't have to learn quite so much. And let's face it, he is a finisher, even if he was falling over for about 15 meters as he tried to make it to the line. So yeah, I guess it could be a bit of horses for courses. Folau, ex sort of league player. I mean, he's been around in Union for a few years now, so you'd think he could know how to pass and when to pass. But it does seem that they are using those guys to hit the line and, as you say, just finish off.
Yeah, that's true. At least we know that Folau's got a good. After he's finished his rugby career, he can open up a good barber's where he likes getting rid of people's hair.
Like, oh dear! Now, see, if you're going to be wearing hair halfway down your back, and a guy grabs your collar, you're asking for it. I'm sorry, I'm not. Yes, it probably was a yellow card, but I also think Etzebeth should have got a yellow card in that instance for coming in and reacting.
I love and respect all tackling styles, but I vote no to hair pulling.
Intentional hair pulling, I totally agree, and that's is a red card for me. But I don't think it was as intentional as a lot of people are trying to make it out to be. Oh wow! So Twiff Tiger on Twitter has said Southern Hemisphere is now lagging behind Northern Hemisphere, with the obvious exception. With South Africa, I think, ranked 2 and Australia ranked 3 in the world. Do you think he is way off the mark there, or do you think that the rugby rankings aren't kind of showing it properly?
I think England's second, right?
Sorry, you're right. So okay,
Australia
sorry,
just jumped up to 3rd.
I guess so. Yeah, that's right. Sorry, you're right. England are second. So yeah, no, I've gone and I'm talking absolutely at my rubbish.
No, I would definitely say that the gap that used to be pretty obvious, arguably, between the North and the South is very small. Yeah, to the point where Ireland, Wales, England, they're not teams that you can be sure you're going to beat. It's
sorry, I had to spit my coffee out there. Wales?
No, well, okay, maybe Wales. Okay, I'll take back Wales. But even when you go to the domestic leagues, you've seen the Cheetahs and Kings get put into the Pro 14, and they're just getting dealt to. Maybe not so much the Cheetahs, but the Kings. And then you look at the Aviva Premiership. I mean, it's lucky it's summer, but the highlights coming out from the English Premiership are, can I swear? I was about to swear. They're incredible. I mean, I don't know if we're going to be getting the same level of tries and handling once the English rains settle in, but it's the gap has closed. I can't remember that person's name. Something to do with the tiger, but yes, the gap has closed. It's, apart from the All Blacks, it's a pretty even playing field. I would have to agree based on evidence.
Yeah, I think the gap's closed. I wouldn't say that the Southern Hemisphere are lagging behind. I think you have got that. You've got some New Zealand, obviously, clearly the best team in the world. England are in second place, slightly ahead of Ireland, South Africa, Australia, who are kind of all in the mix depending on their day, really. And Wales, I think, are aging quite a bit behind that.
Interested to see where Argentina actually was. They've been playing New Zealand, South Africa, and Australia. If they played the Northern Hemisphere regularly, I think their ranking would be significantly higher.
Yep. Yeah, it's. I don't know, because I mean, in the summer, Argentina only beat Georgia. They lost obviously to England's second string team because obviously players were away with the Lions. So I am a little bit, yeah, I'm not positive on Argentina at the moment, unfortunately. But that's my opinion.
Yeah, they've got a lot of questions to be answered, especially their love of the yellow and red card.
Yes, and at least their locks behaved themselves. I was impressed by that. Yes, one of them picked up a yellow card, but to me, I thought it was a little bit harsh for that tip tackle at the weekend. But they didn't give up the 4 to sort of 6 penalties that they normally do.
I want to talk about harsh cards. That red card was disgraceful. It was not a red,
but it was a card.
It was yellow, yeah, and so the result would have been the exact same. And turns out the judiciary has thrown it out anyway, so might as well have been yellow.
Well, yeah, the judiciary agreed it was a yellow. They gave him a warning, which was apparently the same as a yellow. So yeah, do agree. So moving on to that final team, the All Blacks. New Zealand won the Rugby Championship with 6 wins. Is it that clear cut, or are there still lingering questions about the team?
Oh, there's always going to be questions about the All Blacks. That's why they're so good, because we demand so much of them. But I mean, they won it with 2 games to spare, which, if anything, was a little boring. There is still questions about the team for sure. It was good to see that they actually played the full 80 for the first time, I think, in the Rugby Championship. The first halves were amazing, and then their second halves were a big question. They answered that, but there's still some questionable defense, some reads that don't quite happen. Scrums are amazing, but yeah, there's still questions about the All Blacks, especially when you think about, like you were talking about earlier, people coming in who we've got so much, almost like Australia, we don't really know what our best team is.
I'm not sure he doesn't know his best team is, or whether he's just or whether he's building depth. I mean, that's I guess it's 2 different things, and so I think there's quite an element of him actually building depth here, rather than necessarily not knowing who his best team was. I think we saw his best team at the weekend from who was available. Obviously, Metallic would come in, and obviously the props are second choice at the moment. That's because of injury, not because of selection issues. So I think he probably does know who his favourite team is, or his best team is, but I think he's building depth because, as we've seen at Rugby World Cups, you can get a couple of injuries, and then Stephen Donald, who is a good club player, suddenly becomes a national hero for being able to kick a ball once. The Beaver, yes.
Yeah. And what a national hero, might we add. He's still kicking around for Counties Monaco as well.
And he has one of the weirdest running styles. He looks like he's constantly pulled a hamstring and is hobbling.
Weird running styles, look no further than Reece Hodge, the Hodgeback. He runs with his head down almost.
Maybe that's the thing, to try and get the whole high tackle. And it's a way of picking up penalties. It's a trained for skill, maybe.
Maybe it is.
Sonny Bill Williams getting a little bit of hate in the live chat.
Does he always does, though, doesn't he?
He does, and so for that, to me, I don't see it really. Yeah, fine. He's not been throwing lots of wonderful offloads so much in this championship, but he's been kind of doing the basics. And I think actually one of New Zealand's issues might be that they have a whole bunch of 12s and not many 13s at the moment. Because I think Crotty I'd see as more as a 12. Anselm Brown, I'm not sure if he's a 12 or a 13, but I think that's I think there's some questions there as to is there a natural 13 in the squad?
I could make the case that Ryan Crotty plays his best games for the All Blacks at 13. I don't think it really matters whether he's wearing 12 or 13. He's the new Conrad Smith almost. He's bloody reliable. He's solid on defense. He makes the people playing inside or outside of him better. He just gives them that confidence in the back line that you notice. I think it's no coincidence that the All Blacks had their most complete performance of the championship with Ryan Crotty back in his position. But yeah, there is a lot of 12s. Do we want a crash baller like Laumape? Do we want an offloader like Sonny Bill, or I mean, Leonard Brown, yeah, I'd say I'd be more likely to say Leonard Brown and Ryan Crotty, our 12 and 13, just because the Sonny Bill shouldn't be getting as much hate as he does, but he did the basics, but no more. And I think the All Blacks need someone who's going to do more than just the basics.
Yeah, I want to say, but he at least he is doing his basics. He's not you're kind of saying you'd like to try someone else because they're offering more, rather than he's not doing what he needs. He's not performing, and therefore should get dropped, kind of thing. Yeah. Which is a good thing. So I think Tony Williams has been doing fine. I mean, Crosby plays all his Super Rugby at 12. I'm not saying he can't play 13, and I do think he's your first choice. I think he's the first choice centre, whether it's 12 or 13 at the moment for New Zealand. But I think he's more natural at 12 than he is 13. He does a good job there. But anyway, so I think there's a little bit of a question mark there. There might be a little bit of a question mark around the leadership and be able to change game plan during a game. And that's something I think a lot of teams have, that you see they have a problem and then the coaches fix it at half time and they come out and play and they adapt to what the opposition is doing. I'm not sure that not having a Carter and a McCall there, having a Barrett who's much more off the seat of his pants, I don't think they have the leadership to change up as well as they've had in the past.
Yeah, I'd agree. Kieran Reid, he's a good captain, but I don't see him having as much leadership. He's not as much mana as Richie McCaw. It might be a bit harder for him to pull everybody's head in. So that could be part of it. But yeah, Beauden Barrett's style is very off the cuff. So I was surprised to see them take a snap at a drop goal too. That was interesting.
It was, which is a bit of a
planned. Was it planned?
I haven't really thought about it, to be honest. I can't imagine. I guess it's something that you'd think, having seen how crucial it has been in a couple of Rugby World Cups over the last couple of years, or a couple of editions, or 2 or 3 editions, you'd want your side to practice it, because it's something you might need to pull out of the locker at some point.
I just mean, who made the call? Did Sapawanga call it? Did Aaron Smith tell him to get in position, or did Kieran Reid get them in and say, let's go for a drop goal? I like you said, who would have been the leader in that situation?
I'm
not sure.
It looked more like a snap one than a kind of, from memory, than a kind of planned move. So I think that's a Sapawanga. We've tried a bunch of options. I'm going to give it a go thing. And he may have got a bit of a slapping afterwards for missing it.
Well, he got an elbow.
So yeah, I'm not sure that's. I think that was a solo decision rather than the team plan for that one. But I do think that actually they might, just like the All Blacks have trained to play with 14 men, even though they won't admit it. Any team that doesn't train to play with 14 men, you do pick up yellow cards sooner or later, so you need to know what to do. I think similarly, the All Blacks would want to practice drop goals because, as we saw in the last Rugby World Cup when Dan Carter pulled one off, as Johnny Wilkinson famously showed in 2003, that it can be the difference between winning and losing, being able to do it. So I think it's something you'd want in your armoury.
For sure.
So moving on to some real rugby. And I know you like your grass fruits. Should the Mitre 10 Cup Championship have finals, or should top of the ladder just get automatic promotion? Obviously, Wellington are the runaway leaders this year. It could come down to just one game, and they lose that game, they don't get promoted. Yet they're by far the best team down there.
Yeah, that's a good question. Logically, that is a sensible idea, but just you've got to have the playoffs. I mean, imagine if the Taniwha upset Wellington, or Bay of Plenty, even my team, the Steamers, get to the final. They see off Otago in the semis, and they beat Wellington and get promoted again. Ah, glorious. You just can't. You need that passion. It makes sense, but I mean, it gives it a bit more of a. It makes the game mean more, I think. The finals.
it keeps teams interested to the end. I mean, it means there are very few dead rubbers coming this weekend. Even the teams that have got nothing to play for, their games will count for other teams. So Southland, for example, who haven't won a game all season, if they beat Otago, that changes things entirely.
Come on, the Stags. Help Ben Plenty out.
And that's if the Stags were to say, okay, we want to win one game all season, this is the one. Their bigger brother, Northern neighbours, who are next door. This is the kind of the derby match that they're going to want to win. So they will be up for it. That's for sure. But I would feel really, really. I would feel a bit of a prang for Wellington if they didn't make it, because they have just done so well. Arguably, they're the best team in the competition. They've beaten both both Christchurch and not Christchurch, Canterbury. Sorry, both Canterbury and the Naki this season, the top two in the Premiership. So arguably, they are the best team in the whole competition, and to not get promoted would be really kind of harsh.
Yeah, that team that they've got is outstanding. They are the best team in the Mitre 10 Cup, and because of that, surely they have to be promoted from the championship. But if they don't, I mean, look at North Harbour. You could make the case that they had no business getting promoted last year. Now they're guaranteed a semi-final.
Yep, absolutely, and they are way better than Otago this season. Let's be blunt.
They recruited so well. The depth they have. The North Harbour backline is incredible. They've got Treby, they've got Vola, they've got Gatland and Brent Hall, Stevenson, Duffy. It's mouthwatering. And you can make the case they wouldn't have got that team if they hadn't have been promoted in the first place.
True.
They wouldn't have had anything to entice those players there. So whichever team gets promoted to the Premiership from the Championship, if it's not Wellington, may get reinforcements from elsewhere.
That's true. One of the things you could also say about, say, the Auckland backline, if you look at that, they had Moala, Fekitoa, Asso. You got two All Blacks in there, and the top try scorer from Super Rugby. And that hasn't helped Auckland this season.
Not one single bit.
So it's not just about going out and finding yourself a whole bunch of names. That's not going to turn things around for you. It's about the collective. It's about the team. It's about players playing together. That's because those three players I just mentioned probably have got had a handful of games at best together. I'm not sure that Fekitoa and Asso had ever played before together. Coming into this championship.
They're coming from the Hurricanes, the Highlanders, and the Blues. They've got no combination at all. And
also, and Fekitoa has been at the All Blacks the last couple of seasons. He's not even played Mitre 10 Cup with the other players either. So he's coming back into a team that just don't know him from a playing point of view. Obviously, they know his name because he's kind of famous. And I think that's part of it as well. It was interesting at the weekend. I got to sit down with the Northland assistant coach. And talk through about how they've turned things around, because in 2015 they didn't win a game. They only won one game last year, and yet this year there's a good chance that they could make the finals. Can
I just say, is Northland everybody's second favourite team? Like, who doesn't like Northland?
Well, the person I was in the car with on Saturday, well, then again, he's a Magpies fan, so obviously his team losing didn't help at the weekend. But yes, no, I do love them. But again, I've loved them because listening to your show and you going on about the Tanifar and the Manu they have, and the not Manu Tuangi, but have the Mana they have, and the number of dreadlocks. Now, again,
so many dreadlocks. That's the key to victory.
Talking about tackling with hair, I mean, how come Rennie Ranger hasn't had his head ripped off several more times?
No, I don't know, because maybe his running style is a bit more head back than Reece Hodges head forwards.
And Pryor is
more interesting. What about Dan Pryor? His dreadlocks are down to his ass.
But he never carries the ball. He just gets stuck into. Actually, no. To be fair, he scored a try at the weekend, or he offloaded for a try. I can't remember which way around it was. But yeah, he spends most of his time with his head at the bottom of a ruck anyway, which probably means even more dangerous with dreadlocks that long. I mean, I think he's nuts.
I wonder how many penalties how many times has he been penalised for not releasing the tackler when he couldn't because the tackler was on his dreads?
I can't roll away, ref. My head's been pulled. Oh, dearie me. But no, I love that. I mean, I love Northland because my first ever My Saint Cup was Auckland, Northland at Eden Park, Gareth Hanscom's last game before he went up to Wales. And there are a bunch of people with big blue wigs. And I thought, you know what, if there's going to be any atmosphere in this empty stadium today, it's going to be next to these guys. So I sat next to them and they sang throughout. They shouted throughout. The only time they sang, though, was during a kick at post for their own player.
Who was the kicker at the time? Was that still David Hall?
Oh, I haven't got a clue. But they had this song about him kicking it through and how it would be successful. And I'm thinking, in the UK, you're silent at kicking time, especially for your own coach. I've heard of clubs booing the opposition coach trying to put him off, and here they were making the most noise during the game when their own guy was kicking, and that just blew my mind. But anyway,
maybe they knew him. I'd do that if I knew him.
I think there's probably an element of that there. But I was chatting with the assistant coach up there, and one of the things he mentioned was their continuity of players they'd had over the 2 years, and that they'd obviously chosen not to retain some players. Where they'd replaced them, they'd replaced players with Super Rugby experience, and especially in the locks, which you said made a big difference. Was My Saint Cup level. If you want to play My Saint Cup level, because you're playing against super players, you need to be, even if you're not a super player, you need to be training at that intensity, because that's what you're going to be coming up against. So, which was interesting, him talking about that and changing the mindset up there, so that
Well, I think bringing in Jack Goodhue was a genius move. Him and his brother have been playing amazing, and Jack Goodhue was top of the Dwayne Monkleys as well, the Dwayne Monkley medal for Player of the Season. I think they keep it secret now for the rest of the competition. They don't tell you who's got what points at the weekend. But Jack Goodhue was leading the way there, most consistent player.
If there has been a worst medal or style of how they organise medal than that medal, I've got no idea. Because and this was Ryan from the Tribe Sporting App brought this one up and pointed this out to me. They're asking the referees to grade the players.
The match officials give them the points. It's odd.
They spend their time looking at rucks. They have no idea what fullbacks are doing half the time. And you're asking them to do something that's away from their primary job, which is to officiate the game. I'd much rather the coaches grade the opposition players and choose their favorite, their best second, their sort of top three players from the opposition. The head coach had to choose it each game. I think that would be a much more interesting way of doing this, rather than asking the match officials who you're asking them to do something that's out of their job description.
You really want it to get interesting. Leave it to the public. Let the public decide each game.
Nah, because just because there are some people who live in Auckland, we'll just outvote everybody else.
No, for each game though, you won't get everyone in Auckland voting on Southland playing Otago.
You won't get anybody in Auckland voting on that. It's hard enough getting them to watch an Auckland game, never mind watching that game.
What about moving grounds? Move to a smaller ground. Get more intimate.
Oh, totally. Eden Park is an awful ground for Super Rugby, and also
so is Westpac Stadium.
Yep, totally agree. Multi-purpose grounds are no good for rugby. You need a rectangular ground where you're close to pitch side. The atmosphere at Northland was way better than at a Blues game. In a much smaller.
The kickers can hear your sledges there.
That they can, but you've got a ground that was pretty full. At least the stand was pretty full. There was plenty of those were just kids rolling around on the grass. And that meant that even though it wasn't any bigger crowd than you probably get at a Blues game or an Auckland game, the atmosphere was way better because everyone was together. You just get so spread out at Eden Park that it's just, you're shouting at an empty ground, which I agree, they shouldn't be playing there. But otherwise, you have Eden Park would get used, what, 5 times a year? Two All Black tests, and then a bunch of cricket one days.
Yeah, that's true. Because the Blues, how have you found much of a difference between the Blues and the Auckland crowds?
Purely in the fact they don't open up. They only open up a quarter of the ground for a Auckland game. At least they open up 75% of the ground for a Blues game. They don't even open up the whole. They don't even open the whole ground for a Blues game.
I remember when.
Oh dear! No, look. See, I'm the one with grey hair. You've still got. You're not growing grey yet. Don't say. Oh, I remember when.
Oh, I think my girlfriend found one the other day. Whoa, what a day that was! I was living in Australia, having to listen to them talk about rugby.
Well, that's true. I've just lost track of what's going on in the live chat. So thanks, guys, who have been joining in. But it's now we're heading into predictions time. So. Obviously, there's no Rugby Championship this weekend, but we do have the last round of the Mitre 10 Cup. So Taranaki, Manawatu, who's the winner and by how many?
See, I like the idea. I do like Taranaki. I like the idea of Manawatu winning the Shield and giving Taranaki the shortest ever Ranfurly Shield tenure. So I'm going to pick Manawatu by 5. Taranaki have the Shield.
Wow, you've got this whole research thing is very unusual for this show. Whilst I think it would be great to see the Shield go down into the Championship, I'm sorry I can't see it. I think Taranaki by 7. There is also the question of will Manawatu save some players for their Hawke's Bay game on Sunday, because that's the important one when it comes to the finals. But let's be honest, I think the Loggerwood is more important than Championship finals. They get much 100%. More mana from. I can't even. This doesn't even work with my accent. They get much more kudos for winning that than making the finals. So I think they'll go into it. But I think I'm going for Taranaki by 7. Wellington v Northland.
See, this is another head over heart one. I know that Wellington will win. I don't want them to, but they will. They'll win comfortably as well, probably by 14.
Yep, I have to agree. But I've gone by Wellington by 10 on that one. Yeah, again, I'd love Northern to win, especially after having the fact that they would give up time for me to have a chat with them last weekend. But I just can't see it happening. Auckland versus Canterbury on Friday night.
Speaking of, I remember when, this used to be the biggest game on the calendar. Canterbury, I mean, Auckland have got a lot to play for, because if they don't win, then it's up to Waikato, the Waikato Cats. But yeah, Canterbury's going to win, and then it's up to Waikato to beat Have Plenty.
Oh,
Canterbury by 10.
Yeah, I've gone Canterbury by 10 as well. You say Auckland have got a lot to play for. If they don't win this game, then they are staring relegation in the face. But Canterbury also have, because if they don't win this game, Taranaki are not would basically get the home final. If they both make it to the finals, that would make a big difference than in that. So talking of relegation battles, Bay of Plenty versus Waikato.
Bay of Plenty to win this one and send Auckland down.
Send Waikato down, you mean?
No, because Auckland would have lost his... Oh, yeah, that's true. See, now, do I want Bay of Plenty to win, or do I want Auckland to go down? Which one do I want more?
It's not about wanting... It's not.
I'm going to have to pick Bay of Plenty.
It's not your fantasy world. This is how do you think that game will actually? What result do you actually think will happen?
Oh, Bay of Plenty will win. Mike Delaney is steering them around the park really well. They're building nicely for finals. Waikato have been atrocious, and yeah, Bay of Plenty to win by 8.
Well, I think Waikato, the Premiership side, have just a little bit too much for them, and I think they'll squeeze it by 5. At the weekend, they only just missed out to North Harbour. But that was a bit of an atrocious game, yeah, perhaps I hadn't made the drive down there. But anyway, yeah, not the best game in the world. Next up, we have Otago versus Southland.
Otago is going to. I mean, Southland haven't won yet. They could get up for it, but there's a lot of coulds there. And like you said before, I'm living in my fantasy world, but I've got to leave there and be realistic. Otago to win by 15.
I've got Otago by 10, and that'll make things interesting because from memory, Otago are sat 5th in the table.
Yeah.
So that means all those the two sides above them will be put under pressure from that.
No Elliot Dixon for Southland either. He's got surgery on his bicep.
Ow. Well, yes. Well, if he's gone, yeah, it is all over for them, isn't it? Counties Manukau versus Tasman.
I'm going to have to go Tasman. Canterbury Bees have been building nicely. Tasman to win by 11.
Yeah, Counties Manukau have got nothing to play for. They've had a good run of games against in their 4 championship games of the last 4 games. That's pulled them clear of relegation. And I have to agree. I think they will be on holiday, and Tasman do have something to play for because it's finals. They're trying to stay ahead of North Harbour. So I think Tasman by 5. And then the big game for me this weekend, so if you're going to catch a game, I think this is the one to catch, North Harbour versus the Naki.
Yeah, as well. And teams don't often win in both games in their double game week. So Taranaki will be spent after the Ranfurly Shield. I'm going to pick North Harbour to win this one.
Yeah, and that's Ryan gave us some stats showing that I think only after several weeks, only one team had won their Sunday game when they had to back up. So you got to say it is.
Tasman.
And it was Tasman, yes.
I need to get it off my chest. In Pulu, he's the reason why Bay of Plenty didn't also win both of their double game week as well.
It is going to be hard for Naki, but I'm backing Taranaki by 5.
Oh, okay. I'm backing North Harbour by 7.
So but we'll see how that one goes. I might even be able to make that game. We'll have to see. And then the final game of the round, Hawke's Bay versus Manawatu Turbos.
Yeah, Manawatu here. They've got too much class. Otiri Black, Curtis Ambrose, Nani Lomape. I think they've released him from All Blacks camp as well. So 10, 12 points. Why not?
Well, you've got to remember that Manawatu are backing up after playing Taranaki, and they will have thrown everything at trying to get that Ranfurly Shield. But Hawke's Bay have been poor, so I'm backing Manawatu by 7. So that's our predictions for the Mitre 10 Cup. Any final topics you want to have a quick chat about before we sign off?
I'd like to get your thoughts on a NRC Mitre 10 Cup match, maybe like the best players from a Mitre 10 Cup who have not played at Super Rugby level from the NRC, who have not played at Super Rugby level, to do maybe almost essentially New Zealand Barbarians versus Australian Barbarians, but representative of each comp. Do you think that game would work? Would you like to see that game?
I would like to see the champions of both of them take each other on. Maybe. And I think there is a gap between that. I mean, that could make a really good Bledisloe Cup 3 pre-game game as well, because that would be because that would be a nice one for that. And the NRC, you know, this is the 4th year of it now, I think it is. So perhaps the teams are
still young.
So perhaps teams are starting to get and from what I understand, especially for some of the Sydney sides, the coaches are basically volunteers and not actually paid to coach these sides. So the standard of the level of I don't want to say the level of coaching, because some of those coaches are very good coaches, but the amount of time they have to dedicate to it is a lot less than the Mitre 10 Cup coaches who are basically full time.
There's not enough.
But I do think those teams will be starting to mature. So maybe it is about time to have those have that crossover of the champions. I don't think a Barbarians one would, of non-super players, would get much attention from people, and
kind
of what's the point of it? I don't really. It's not really a kind of a Super Rugby trials match or anything.
Seats.
I don't think you get bums on seats. I think if you actually got 2 teams who they've got the champions teams, then I think you might be able to get some bums on the seats.
That'd probably work better.
So Canterbury versus Perth Spirit. From I think Canterbury won last, didn't they?
Perth Spirit won last year. It's looking like even the Fijian Jaw team. Brad Thorne as well, so that conspiracy is spreading further and further.
Brad Thorne, who's also been named the new Reds head coach as well, with zero kind of head coach experience outside of as you say, semi-amateur, semi-pro NRC competition. Yeah, I think that's been a bad call by the Reds. But and I think Brad Thorne has perhaps bitten off a little bit more than he can chew with that one. But yeah, no, I think a champions thing between the two teams could be good, but I'm not sure. I wouldn't. I don't think a representative one would kind of work personally.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah. So go on, let people know where they get hold of you, and also and the fantastic podcast that you guys run every week as well.
Yeah, and don't talk us up. People listen and realize you're lying. We're the Rugby Roundup. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Just look for the Rugby Roundup. Make videos trying to promote grassroots rugby here in Australia. It was dying, and I don't really like rugby league at all, so I had to prove them wrong. I want people to like union again, so doing what you're doing, it inspired us to pick up a microphone and a camera and start doing what we're doing. So Rugby Roundup.
Wow. Well, thank you. You guys can take it on the road, and say you've been going to club games and NRC games. So, and the club game in Australia is definitely vibrant at the moment. Looking at some of the Shoot Shield, and I've gone blank as to what it's called up in Brisbane, but they've both had good crowds out for their club competitions, and especially the finals as well. And I'm Paul, obviously the guy behind DrivingMaul. The fact that I've inspired someone else to get in front of the camera amazes me. But thank you so much. It has been great. Please don't forget to subscribe. Give us those 5-star reviews on Apple Tunes or iTunes or whatever it's called nowadays. And I'm always up for good rugby chat, so don't forget to drop below. There is no post-game shows this weekend, but I might. I forgot to record my interview with the assistant of Northland, but I might do a one-man kind of chat about that interview I did with him, as well as write it up as well. So if I can, I'll try and get that out on Thursday, but we'll have to wait and see and keep you on tender hooks as to how that goes. Thanks for joining me. I'll be back next Tuesday at 8 p.m. and don't forget to to subscribe to the Rugby Roundup podcast as well. Cheers, guys. Good night.